My name is Alana Thompson, and I'm 27 years old. Growing up in Portland, I was the invisible child in a household obsessed with appearances. My parents were so consumed with their careers and social status that they barely noticed I existed. For years, I lived in their shadows, desperately seeking any scrap of attention or affection. 6 months ago, I moved away without telling them, and they never even noticed. Now, out of the blue, my father calls with demands. If you've ever felt invisible to someone who should have cared, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because this story might feel familiar. I grew up in an upscale neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, where every house looked perfect from the outside, including ours. Our two-story colonial with its manicured lawn and seasonal decorations was featured twice in local home magazines. From the street, you'd think the Thompson family had it all together. My father, James Thompson, was a corporate lawyer who specialized in mergers and acquisitions. His typical day started at 5 in the morning and often didn't end until 9 or 10 at night. On weekends, he was either catching up on work in his home office or playing golf with clients. His defining characteristic was his absence, and when he was physically present, his mind was usually elsewhere. My mother, Diana Thompson, worked as a real estate agent for luxury properties. She was obsessed with appearances and social climbing. Her calendar was filled with charity galas, country club events, and networking opportunities. She viewed these social connections as investments, and nothing could interfere with her carefully cultivated image of success. Our house had 5 bedrooms, but somehow still felt empty. The kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances that rarely saw use since my parents almost never cooked. The living room with its white furniture was kept pristine for potential visitors rather than actual living. My bedroom was at the end of the hall, decorated in whatever style my mother thought appropriate for a daughter of her status, without ever asking what I might like. I can't remember a time when I didn't understand that I was an afterthought in my parents' lives. My earliest clear memory is from my 6th birthday. My mother had scheduled an open house that conflicted with the small party we were supposed to have. She handed me $20 and told me to order pizza, saying she'd try to be back before the cake. She wasn't. My father had forgotten entirely and was on a business trip. When I was 8, I won first place in a school art contest. My watercolor painting of a lonely girl looking out a window had captured the attention of the judges, who praised its emotional depth. The award ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday evening, and I left reminder notes for both my parents on the refrigerator, their bathroom mirrors, and their car dashboards. Neither showed up. My teacher, Mrs. Sandoval, noticed me sitting alone afterward and drove me home. My parents were both there when we arrived, my father working in his office, and my mother preparing for a dinner party the following evening. Neither had remembered. The Thompson family had a large calendar in the kitchen where my parents meticulously recorded their appointments, meetings, and social engagements. My school events, doctor appointments, and activities were rarely added. I started adding them myself around age 9, using a different colored pen. They still went largely unnoticed. I learned to be self-sufficient out of necessity. By age 10, I could cook simple meals, do my own laundry, and get myself to and from school activities by bike or public transportation. I found solace in books and art, creating worlds and connections on paper that I couldn't find at home. Our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, became an unofficial guardian angel. She was a retired teacher who noticed the little girl who spent so much time alone. She taught me to cook real meals, helped me with homework, and showed me what genuine care looked like. When I was with her, I felt seen for the first time. She never criticized my parents directly, but I could see the concern in her eyes when she asked about them. It was through Mrs. Garcia and visits to friends' homes that I began to understand my home life wasn't normal. I would watch in fascination as my friends' parents asked about their days, helped with homework, and attended school functions. I saw families eat dinner together and discuss their lives. I observed parents who knew the names of their children's friends and teachers. These glimpses into normal family life were both comforting and painful, showing me what I was missing. As I approached middle school, I had developed a protective shell and a deep understanding that I would need to take care of myself. I had Mrs. Garcia, my books, my art, and a growing determination to create a different life for myself someday. What I didn't have was the one thing every child should be able to take for granted: parents who noticed I existed. As I entered my teenage years, the pattern of neglect that had defined my childhood not only continued but escalated. I began middle school with a strategy: if I could just be exceptional enough, maybe then my parents would notice me. I threw myself into academics, joining every club that might look good on a future college application and maintaining a perfect GPA. Every achievement was a silent plea for attention that went largely unanswered. My father's standard response when I tried to share good news was a distracted, "That's nice, Alana," without looking up from his phone or laptop. My mother's typical reaction was to ask how it compared to what the children of her social circle were accomplishing. "Jennifer Watson's daughter made National Honor Society and plays 3 instruments," was her response when I proudly showed her my straight A report card. By 14, I was completely self-sufficient. I woke myself up, prepared my own meals, did my own laundry, and managed my school responsibilities entirely alone. I learned to forge my parents' signatures on permission slips, since waiting for them to actually read and sign documents was an exercise in futility. I maintained our family fiction by never revealing to teachers or administrators how absent my parents truly were. The school counselor once called home because she was concerned about my intense perfectionism and anxiety. My mother charmed her completely during their meeting, promising more family time and support. Nothing changed except my mother complained for weeks about the inconvenience of having to meet with that nosy woman. When I turned 16, I got my driver's license on the first try. My parents had paid for driving lessons since it meant they wouldn't have to teach me themselves. I expected no celebration, but had secretly hoped my father might at least acknowledge this milestone. Instead, he handed me the keys to their old car, without looking up from his dinner, and reminded me that I would be responsible for gas and maintenance. The car wasn't a gift. It was a final severing of one of the few remaining ways they had to participate in my life. High school graduation loomed as the ultimate test. For 4 years, I had maintained a 4.0 GPA, served as editor of the school newspaper, won state recognition for my artwork, and secured a substantial scholarship to the University of Washington. The morning of graduation, both my parents assured me they would be there. My mother even mentioned bringing their camera. I scanned the audience repeatedly as we filed in but couldn't spot them. During the ceremony, I kept glancing at the doors, thinking they might be running late. They never arrived. After receiving my diploma, I checked my phone to find a text from my father. Something came up at work. "Dinner in fridge. Congratulations." That night, I sat alone at a diner near our house, picking at a hamburger and trying not to cry. Jennifer, the waitress, noticed and brought me a slice of cake with a candle. "On the house, honey. Whatever you're celebrating, you deserve to mark the occasion." That simple act of kindness from a stranger broke something open inside me. I cried right there at the counter, and Jennifer simply patted my hand and refilled my water glass, giving me space to feel my disappointment. Throughout these years, I found moments of normalcy and genuine connection through 2 close friends, Taylor Williams and Madison Patel. Taylor's family in particular became my refuge. Her parents insisted I join them for holidays and special occasions. Mrs. Williams always hugged me when I arrived, and when I left, a simple gesture that felt extraordinary to me. Mr. Williams asked me about my interests and remembered what I told him from one conversation to the next. They showed me what family could be. The Thanksgiving incident during my junior year marked a particular low point. I came home from school to find the house unusually quiet. No note, no text message, nothing. After calling both my parents repeatedly with no answer, I finally received a text from my mother. "On cruise with Hendersons. Food in freezer. Back Tuesday." They had forgotten to tell me they were leaving town for the holiday. I spent Thanksgiving with Taylor's family, telling them my parents had been called away on a last-minute business emergency. I had become expert at covering for them. The college application process reinforced my isolation. I researched schools, wrote essays, requested recommendation letters, and submitted applications entirely on my own. When my acceptance letter from the University of Washington arrived, along with a merit scholarship that would cover most of my expenses, I left it on the kitchen counter where my parents couldn't miss it. 3 days later, it was still there unopened. When I finally showed them, my father's response was, "Seattle's a long way. Housing will be expensive." My mother said, "The Richardson's son got into Stanford." I decided that day that Seattle couldn't be far enough away. Moving to Seattle for college marked the beginning of my true independence. On move-in day, I watched as other freshmen arrived with parents who helped carry boxes, made beds, and tearfully said goodbye. I had driven myself the 3 hours from Portland in my old car, packed with the few belongings I deemed essential for my new life. No one helped me unpack. No one hugged me goodbye. No one called that night to make sure I had settled in safely. My roommate Sarah looked confused when no family accompanied me. "Are your parents coming later?" she asked innocently. I had prepared for this question and others like it. "They had to work," I explained with the practiced smile I had perfected over years of covering for their absence. It was the first of many half-truths I would tell to avoid the pitying looks that came when people realized the extent of my parents' disinterest. The University of Washington campus became my sanctuary. I declared a psychology major, partly because I was genuinely interested in human behavior, but also because I desperately wanted to understand my own upbringing. Classes on developmental psychology and family dynamics offered clinical terms for what I had experienced: emotional neglect, conditional acceptance, attachment disorders. There was something validating about discovering that my experiences had names and were studied by professionals. I wasn't making it up or being overly sensitive as my mother had often suggested. During my freshman year, I used some of my scholarship money to begin therapy sessions with Dr. Winters, a compassionate woman in her 50s who specialized in family trauma. In our first session, I attempted to minimize my experiences, saying things like, "It wasn't that bad," and "At least they never hit me." Dr. Winters gently challenged these defenses. "Emotional neglect leaves invisible scars, Alana. Just because others can't see them doesn't mean they're not real." With Dr. Winters' guidance, I began the painful process of acknowledging the depth of my parents' neglect and its impact on me. I recognized my perfectionism as a desperate attempt to earn the love and attention that should have been freely given. I saw how my reluctance to ask for help stemmed from a lifetime of being told directly and indirectly that my needs were inconvenient. I understood my difficulty in forming close relationships as a natural protective mechanism for someone who had learned early that attachment often led to disappointment. Sophomore year brought a mental health crisis that, in retrospect, was inevitable. The pressure I put on myself to maintain perfect grades while working part-time and adjusting to college life became overwhelming. I began experiencing panic attacks and insomnia. When I finally admitted to Dr. Winters that I was struggling, she helped me recognize that I was holding myself to impossible standards based on the conditional acceptance I had grown up with. "Your worth isn't determined by your achievements, Alana," she told me during a particularly difficult session. "You deserve care and love simply because you exist, not because of what you accomplish." This concept was so foreign to me that I initially rejected it. It took months of therapy for me to begin internalizing this fundamental truth. As my mental health improved, I began building what Dr. Winters called my chosen family. My roommates Sarah and Zoe became close friends who checked in when I was studying late and saved me plates of dinner from their cooking experiments. I joined an art club where I met Jordan and Amelia, fellow creative spirits, who appreciated my watercolors and invited me to gallery openings and coffee shop discussions about life and art. Holiday visits home became increasingly difficult as the contrast between my supportive community in Seattle and the cold emptiness of my parents' house grew starker. During winter break of my junior year, I arrived home to find my parents had decided to spend Christmas in Hawaii without telling me. A neighbor gave me the spare key they had left in case any packages arrived. I stayed one night in that empty house before returning to Seattle, where I spent the remainder of break with Zoe's family, who welcomed me without question. That incident marked a turning point. I stopped trying to bridge the unbridgeable gap between my parents and me. I limited my visits home to brief obligatory appearances. I focused instead on nurturing the genuine connections I was building in Seattle. When graduation approached at the end of my senior year, I debated not inviting my parents at all, but ultimately sent them a formal invitation, partly out of lingering hope, and partly because their absence would raise too many questions from others. To my surprise, they actually attended my college graduation. They arrived just before the ceremony began and left immediately after it ended, not bothering to meet any of my friends or professors. Throughout the ceremony, I watched my mother networking with parents seated near them, exchanging business cards for potential real estate connections. My father spent most of the time checking emails on his phone. They took one photo with me holding my diploma, which my mother later posted on social media with the caption, "So proud of our daughter." The performance of parenthood without its substance had become their specialty. Before leaving campus that day, I received a job offer from a Seattle design firm where I had interned during my final semester. I accepted on the spot, not bothering to consult my parents. I had long since stopped expecting their input or support. Seattle had become my home, and I had no intention of returning to Portland, except when absolutely necessary. The 4 years following college graduation were transformative. I established myself as a graphic designer at Horizon Creative, earning respect for my clean aesthetic and ability to translate client needs into compelling visuals. Work became not just a career, but a place where my contributions were valued, and my presence mattered, a stark contrast to my childhood experience. My apartment in Capitol Hill became my first true home, decorated entirely according to my own taste, with no one to criticize or override my choices. The walls featured art from local creators I admired alongside my own pieces. Plants thrived on every windowsill, their growth a tangible reminder of my own. Friends gathered around my dining table for potluck dinners and game nights, filling the space with laughter and conversation. Contact with my parents dwindled to occasional obligatory phone calls that I initiated out of lingering duty rather than desire. These conversations followed a predictable pattern: brief inquiries about my work that never went beyond surface-level updates on their social calendar and acquaintances I barely knew, and pointed questions about when I might find a real career or a serious relationship. Each call left me emotionally drained and reinforced my decision to maintain distance. The pattern of neglect continued even with 3,000 miles between us. My parents canceled their planned visit to Seattle 3 times over 4 years, always for reasons related to work or social obligations. They forgot my birthday 2 years in a row, sending belated text messages with generic well wishes. When I developed pneumonia and was hospitalized for 3 days, neither of them offered to visit or even called to check on my recovery. A floral arrangement arrived from James and Diana Thompson a week after I was discharged, clearly ordered by my father's assistant. Throughout these years, I continued therapy with Dr. Winters, gradually building a sense of self-worth independent of my parents' validation. "You're mourning the parents you deserved but never had," she explained during one session. "That grief is valid, but it doesn't define you." We worked on recognizing and countering the critical internal voice that sounded suspiciously like my mother, replacing it with self-compassion and realistic expectations. 2 years into my time at Horizon Creative, I met Marcus Chen at a client meeting. He was a software developer with kind eyes and a quiet confidence I found immediately attractive. Our professional relationship quickly evolved into friendship and then romance. Marcus noticed my tendency to apologize for taking up space, for having opinions, for essentially existing. "You don't need to say sorry for being yourself," he would gently remind me. "I like who you are." 6 months into our relationship, Marcus witnessed one of my phone calls with my parents. He watched as I grew increasingly tense, my responses becoming shorter and my posture shrinking. After I hung up, he asked careful questions about my family dynamic. When I hesitantly shared the extent of their neglect, expecting disbelief or dismissal, he instead validated my experience. "That wasn't okay, Alana. You deserved better." Having someone witness and acknowledge the dysfunction I had normalized for so long was powerfully validating. Marcus never pushed me to cut ties with my parents, but he supported my boundaries and helped me recognize when I was falling into old patterns of seeking their approval. The final breaking point came last spring. After years of dedicated work, I had been selected to showcase my personal artwork in a small but well-regarded Seattle gallery. This exhibition represented not just my talent as an artist, but my journey toward authentic self-expression. It was the first time I was publicly sharing pieces that reflected my experiences of isolation and eventual connection. Despite my better judgment, I called my parents to invite them. "It would mean a lot if you could come," I said, hating the childlike hope that still colored my voice. To my shock, they agreed. My father even said, "We're proud of you, Alana." For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe they might actually show up for me. I spent weeks preparing for their visit. I reserved special seats at the opening reception. I practiced introducing them to Marcus and my friends. I rehearsed explaining my artistic process, imagining my father finally understanding my passion, and my mother finally seeing me as a person, rather than an extension of her social image. 2 hours before the exhibition opening, as I was getting dressed in the outfit I had carefully selected, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Can't make it after all. Anderson invited us to Country Club Gala. Career opportunity for your mother. Maybe next time." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. No apology, no acknowledgement of what this meant to me. Just another casual dismissal of a momentous occasion in my life. When Marcus arrived to pick me up and found me sitting motionless on the edge of my bed, still clutching my phone, he immediately understood what had happened. "You don't have to go tonight," he said, sitting beside me. "We can reschedule." I shook my head and finally allowed the tears to flow. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus held me as years of suppressed grief poured out. "No," he said gently. "They're probably not. But you have changed. You've built a beautiful life without them." That night, surrounded by friends who had become family and a partner who truly saw me, I made the decision to make a clean break. My parents had taught me from childhood that I was an afterthought in their lives. It was time I accepted that painful truth and stopped expecting them to become the parents I needed. My decision to move without informing my parents wasn't made impulsively. After the gallery opening, I spent several weeks discussing the idea with Dr. Winters, carefully examining my motivations and expectations. "This isn't about punishing them," I explained during one session. "It's about acknowledging reality. They don't factor me into their lives in any meaningful way, so why am I obligated to keep them updated on mine?" Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. "There's a difference between cutting ties out of anger and creating distance for your own well-being. The question is, what do you hope this will accomplish?" "Honestly, peace," I replied. "I'm tired of the constant disappointment. I'm tired of maintaining a relationship that exists only in name. Maybe if they don't know where I am, I'll finally stop expecting them to show up." We discussed the likelihood that my parents might not notice my absence for some time and how I would feel about that. Rather than finding this prospect painful, I felt a strange sense of liberation. Their potential non-reaction would simply confirm what I already knew and had been denying for too long. With clarity about my decision, I began searching for a new apartment. I found a beautiful one-bedroom in the Queen Anne neighborhood with large windows perfect for my plants, and a spare room I could use as an art studio. The lease was slightly above my budget, but the promotion I had recently received at work made it manageable. Marcus helped me pack and move over a weekend along with Taylor, who had also settled in Seattle after college, and my coworker Amelia. We turned the process into something joyful, ordering pizza and playing music as we wrapped dishes and disassembled furniture. There was something symbolic about having people who genuinely cared about me helping to create my new space. The first few weeks after moving, I didn't answer my parents' rare calls. I sent a simple text that I was busy with work when my mother messaged about their upcoming anniversary party, an event I had no intention of attending. I provided no details about my new address or phone number. I simply disappeared from their radar, much as they had been absent from mine for most of my life. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. No frantic calls wondering where I was. No concerned messages asking if I was okay. The silence from their end confirmed everything I had known, but had been unable to fully accept. I wasn't even important enough to miss. While my relationship with my parents withered from neglect, other connections in my life flourished. Marcus and I grew closer, spending weekends exploring Seattle's neighborhoods and evenings cooking together in my new kitchen. He introduced me to his parents during their visit from San Francisco, and they welcomed me with warmth that felt almost foreign. His mother Linda called me weekly just to chat a concept so novel it brought me to tears the first few times. My career continued to thrive as well. 6 months after my move, I was promoted to senior designer at Horizon Creative, taking on larger clients and mentoring junior designers. My colleagues celebrated with a surprise party, complete with a cake featuring my favorite design projects in fondant. Such thoughtful recognition of my achievements still sometimes caught me off guard. Perhaps most healing was my volunteer work teaching art to children at a community center in a low-income neighborhood. Every Saturday morning, I worked with kids aged 8 to 12, showing them techniques, but mostly encouraging their natural creativity. I made sure to learn each child's name, to comment specifically on their work, to notice when they were absent, and welcome them warmly when they returned. In many ways, I gave these children the attention and validation I had craved as a child myself. One particularly quiet girl named Zara reminded me painfully of my younger self. During our third session together, she created a beautiful detailed drawing of a bird in flight, but then tried to hide it when I walked by. I gently asked to see her work, and was genuinely impressed by her talent. "You have a gift for capturing movement," I told her. The look of surprise and pleasure on her face was heartbreakingly familiar. After class, Zara's grandmother thanked me for noticing her granddaughter. "Her parents are very busy with work," she explained in a way that made it clear this was a chronic situation. "Sometimes I think she feels invisible." "I understand completely," I replied, and in that moment resolved to make sure Zara never felt overlooked in my classroom, even if I couldn't change her home situation. For 6 months, I lived the most peaceful, fulfilled life I had ever experienced. The constant background anxiety of waiting for my parents' approval or attention had finally quieted. I slept better. I laughed more easily. I created art that came from a place of authentic emotion rather than performance. I began to understand what it meant to be truly at home, not just in a physical space, but in my own life. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone rang with my father's number. I stared at my phone screen as if it were a foreign object. My father hardly ever called me directly. Our limited communication usually came through my mother or via text message. For a moment I considered not answering, but curiosity won out. It had been 6 months since I'd spoken to either of my parents. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Alana, where have you been?" My father's voice carried its usual blend of authority and impatience. No, "How are you?" No acknowledgement of the half year of silence. "I've been in Seattle, Dad. Working, living my life." I kept my tone neutral as I turned down the heat under the pasta sauce I'd been making. "Well, we need you to come home this weekend." Not a request, but a demand. Typical. "This weekend doesn't work for me. I have commitments." I wasn't being difficult. I truly did have plans with Marcus and a Saturday art class to teach. "You'll need to rearrange them. This is important." He paused, and I heard papers shuffling in the background. Always multitasking, even during rare conversations with his only child. "What's so important that I need to drop everything and drive 3 hours to Portland with no notice?" I asked, genuinely curious what could possibly qualify as important enough to warrant this unprecedented demand for my presence. "Your grandmother passed away." He delivered this news with the same tone he might use to report a minor change in the weather forecast. The wooden spoon I was holding clattered to the countertop. "Grandma Rose died when—" My voice cracked. My grandmother, my father's mother, had been the only extended family member who had shown consistent interest in my life, sending birthday cards that contained specific references to things I had mentioned in our phone calls, asking questions that showed she had been listening during our previous conversations. 2 months ago. Heart attack. It was very sudden. Again, his tone remained detached, clinical. 2 months. I repeated, disbelief giving way to a familiar hurt. Why am I just hearing about this now? "We tried to call you." A lie so transparent it almost made me laugh. "Anyway, the family is gathering this weekend for the reading of the will and to distribute some of her personal items. Your presence is expected." Not requested. Expected. And not because I might want to mourn my grandmother or connect with family during a difficult time, but because my presence was necessary for some administrative purpose. You didn't think to tell me my grandmother died for 2 whole months, and now you're demanding I show up for the will reading. Did it occur to you that I might have wanted to attend her funeral?" A heavy sigh from his end. There wasn't a funeral per se, just a small memorial service. Rose didn't want anything elaborate. Which wasn't the point, and he knew it. "Why are you really calling Dad after 6 months of not checking on me or even noticing I moved to a different apartment? Why is it suddenly crucial that I come home?" A long pause followed. I could almost see him weighing how much truth to reveal. "Your grandmother left you something in her will," he finally admitted. "Your presence is required for the reading and distribution of assets." And there it was. Not concern for me, not a desire to see his daughter, but a financial and legal obligation that required my physical presence. "I see." I kept my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "And if I choose not to come?" "That wouldn't be advisable." His tone hardened. "This is a family obligation, Alana. Everyone will be there. If you don't show up, what do you expect us to tell them? That you've abandoned the family after all we've done for you?" The audacity of that statement momentarily robbed me of speech. All they'd done for me, provide the bare minimum of physical necessities while completely neglecting my emotional needs. Forget my achievements, my birthdays, my existence unless it was convenient for them. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad?" I asked quietly. "When was the last time you asked how I was doing? Do you know where I live now? Do you know I was promoted 6 months ago? Do you know I had a gallery showing? Do you know anything about my life at all?" "Don't be dramatic, Alana. We've always provided for you. We put a roof over your head, paid for your education. You paid part of my tuition," I corrected him. "My scholarship covered most of it. Remember, the scholarship you didn't even acknowledge when I received it." "This isn't productive," he said dismissively. "The fact remains that your grandmother specifically left you her lake house and a significant portion of her estate. If you don't appear to claim it, those assets will be redistributed according to the secondary provisions of her will." The mention of the lake house sent another wave of grief through me. I had spent several summers there as a child, the only extended periods of time I could remember feeling truly happy and secure. Grandma Rose had taught me to swim in that lake, had encouraged my art as we painted the sunset over the water, had listened to my thoughts and feelings as if they mattered. "I didn't know about the will," I said honestly. "I didn't even know she had died." "Yes, well now you do. So can we expect you on Saturday at 10 a.m.? The attorney has a tight schedule." No acknowledgement of his failure to inform me of my grandmother's death. No apology for the neglect. No recognition of my grief. Just a business transaction to be completed. Something broke inside me in that moment, but unlike past breaks that had left me smaller and more wounded, this one felt like the breaking of chains. "I'll be there," I said, "but not for you or for the will, for Grandma Rose. And after Saturday, we need to have a serious conversation about what kind of relationship, if any, we're going to have going forward." "Don't be ridiculous," he began, but I cut him off. "I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being honest, probably for the first time. I'll see you Saturday." I ended the call before he could respond. I stood in my kitchen, shaking with a mixture of grief for my grandmother and anger at my father. Marcus found me there 10 minutes later when he arrived with dessert for our dinner. One look at my face told him something was wrong. As I explained the situation, his expression grew increasingly troubled. "They didn't tell you your grandmother died for 2 months," he repeated clearly, struggling to comprehend such neglect. "And now they're demanding you come for the will reading." "That's my family," I said with a bitter laugh, "only reaching out when they need something from me." Marcus took my hands in his. "You don't have to go alone. I can come with you." His offer of support meant more than he could know. "Would you? It would help to have someone there who's actually on my side." "Always," he promised. "And Alana, I'm so sorry about your grandmother. She sounds like she was a wonderful person." That simple acknowledgement of my loss, something my own father had been incapable of providing, brought tears to my eyes. She was the only one in my family who ever really saw me. That night, I called Taylor, who still had connections in Portland, and confirmed what my father had told me. Yes, my grandmother had passed away 2 months ago. Yes, there had been a small memorial service. No, my parents hadn't made any noticeable effort to contact me about it. They had simply told everyone I was too busy with work in Seattle to attend. As I processed this information, I made a decision. I would go to Portland on Saturday, but not to please my parents or to claim an inheritance. I would go to honor my grandmother's memory and to finally speak my truth to the family that had spent a lifetime ignoring it. The drive from Seattle to Portland that Saturday morning felt like a journey back in time. With Marcus beside me providing quiet support, I navigated the familiar highway while memories surfaced unbidden. I remembered countless solo trips in the opposite direction, fleeing to Seattle for college, and then for visits during breaks, each departure feeling like escape, and each return like willingly walking back into a cage. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked as we passed the sign welcoming us to Portland. "Not really," I admitted, "but I will be." My parents' house looked exactly as I remembered, perfectly maintained, impeccably landscaped, and utterly cold. Several expensive cars already lined the driveway, indicating other family members had arrived. I parked on the street, took a deep breath, and reached for Marcus's hand. "Remember," he said softly, "you're not that defenseless child anymore. You're a strong, successful woman who deserves respect." With those words bolstering my courage, I walked up the familiar path to the front door. I didn't need to knock or ring the bell. As the daughter of the house, even after 6 months of absence, I was expected to simply enter. So I did. The foyer was filled with relatives I rarely saw, my father's brother, Uncle Stephen, and his wife, Aunt Carol, cousins I barely knew, and a few family friends who had been close to my grandmother. They all looked up in surprise when I entered with Marcus. "Alana," Aunt Carol exclaimed, "your parents said you might not make it because of your busy schedule." Of course they had. Rather than admit they had barely communicated with me, they had crafted a narrative that made me seem too self-absorbed to attend family gatherings. "I wouldn't miss this," I replied simply. "This is Marcus, my partner." Before anyone could respond, my mother appeared from the living room, her expression a careful mask of polite welcome. "Alana, you made it, and you've brought a friend." "My partner," I corrected firmly. "Marcus, this is my mother, Diana Thompson." Marcus extended his hand with perfect politeness. "I'm very sorry for your family's loss, Mrs. Thompson." My mother shook his hand briefly before turning to me. "Everyone's gathering in the living room. The attorney is setting up." No hug. No, "I've missed you." No acknowledgement of the 6-month gap in communication. It was as if I had simply been away for the weekend. My father was directing proceedings in the living room, indicating where people should sit and consulting with a silver-haired man who I assumed was the attorney. He looked up when I entered, giving me a curt nod that communicated both acknowledgement of my presence and approval that I had followed his instructions. "Mr. Reynolds, this is my daughter Alana," he said to the attorney, "the primary beneficiary for the lake property. Not my beloved daughter, or even just my daughter Alana, but the primary beneficiary. My role defined by the assets I stood to inherit, rather than my relationship to the family." I took a seat on the periphery of the room, Marcus beside me. Several relatives looked at us curiously, and I realized that most of them probably knew very little about my life. In the carefully edited version of family history, my parents presented, I was likely the successful daughter living an exciting life in Seattle, too busy for family gatherings but still very much part of the Thompson fold. The attorney cleared his throat and began the formal reading of my grandmother's will. I listened with half an ear to the standard legal language until he reached the specific bequests. "To my son James and his wife Diana, I leave my primary residence in Portland and its contents with the exceptions noted below, along with my stock portfolio." My father nodded, having clearly expected this substantial inheritance. "To my son Stephen and his wife Carol, I leave my vacation home in Bend and the sum of $500,000. Uncle Stephen squeezed Aunt Carol's hand, both looking appropriately solemn. "To my granddaughter Alana Thompson," the attorney continued, adjusting his glasses, "I leave my lake house property in full, including all structures and contents, along with the sum of $750,000. A murmur went through the room. I heard my cousin Jennifer whisper something to her husband. My father's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The attorney wasn't finished. Additionally, I leave to Alana my entire art collection, my personal jewelry, and all of my journals and photographs. He looked up at me. Mrs. Rose Thompson also left a personal letter for you, which I was instructed to give directly to you. He handed me an envelope with my name written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled slightly as I took it. Is that all? My father asked sharply. There are some smaller bequests to friends and charities, the attorney replied, but those are the major distributions of assets. The atmosphere at the room had changed. What should have been a somber occasion marking the passing of a beloved family matriarch had become charged with tension over who had received what. I saw my father and uncle exchange a look clearly displeased with the distribution. My mother's smile had become fixed and brittle. After the formal reading concluded, the attorney approached me privately. Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes regarding you, Ms. Thompson. She wanted to ensure you would have financial security and a place that could truly be your own. Thank you, I managed to say past the lump in my throat. She was very special to me. She spoke of you often and with great pride, he said kindly before moving on to discuss details with my father. As family members began to mingle and discuss the proceedings, I slipped away to the back porch needing a moment alone. The garden where I had spent countless hours as a child reading or drawing to escape the emptiness of the house looked meticulously maintained as always, yet somehow diminished in my adult eyes. I carefully opened my grandmother's letter, my heart pounding. My dearest Alana, it began. If you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever adventure comes next. Don't be sad for me, sweet girl. I've had a good long run. I want you to know that I have always seen you even when others didn't. I've watched you grow from a quiet, watchful child into a strong, creative woman, often without the support you deserved. Your resilience has been remarkable. The lake house has always been your happy place, and now it's yours completely. Make new memories there. Fill it with laughter and love and all the joy you deserve. The money is practical, of course. Use it to build the life you want, not the one others expect of you. You've always had the courage to forge your own path even when it was lonely. My jewelry isn't particularly valuable in monetary terms, but each piece holds memories. The art collection, however, is worth quite a bit. Several pieces are by artists who have become quite renowned since I acquired their work. The appraiser's details are with Mr. Reynolds. Most importantly, I want you to know that being your grandmother has been one of the greatest joys of my life. You are extraordinary, Alana, and I have always been so proud of you. Live boldly, love deeply, create beauty. All my love, Grandma Rose. Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. My grandmother had seen me when my own parents couldn't or wouldn't. She had recognized my struggles and my strength, and in her final act, she had given me not just material security, but validation of my worth. I was still sitting there, letter in hand, when my father found me. His expression was thunderous. We need to discuss your plans for the lake house, he said without preamble. Your mother and I think it would make sense for you to sell it to us. It's too much responsibility for someone your age, and we have sentimental attachment to the property. I looked up at him, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time in my life. This man who had provided materially for my existence while withholding the emotional nourishment every child needs. This man who had just learned his mother had left her beloved lake house to his daughter, and whose first thought was how to get it for himself. No, I said simply. Excuse me. He seemed genuinely shocked at my refusal. I said no. I'm not selling the lake house. Grandma Rose wanted me to have it, and I intend to honor her wishes. His face reddened. Don't be difficult, Alana. We can give you fair market value. It's not about the money, Dad. It's about respecting what Grandma wanted, and what I want. What you want, he repeated incredulously. After everything we've done for you, you'd deny us this simple request. Something in me snapped. 27 years of silence, of accommodating, of making myself small to avoid conflict, of pretending the emotional neglect wasn't happening, all came to an explosive end. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, standing up to face him. You provided food and shelter. You paid for some of my education. Congratulations on meeting the bare minimum legal requirements of parenthood." "How dare you?" he began, but I cut him off. "No, how dare you? How dare you and Mom pretend to be loving parents when you've barely acknowledged my existence for 27 years? How dare you not tell me my grandmother died for 2 entire months? How dare you only call me when you need something?" His face had gone from red to white. "You're being hysterical." "I'm being honest, probably for the first time." I took a deep breath. "Did you know I moved 6 months ago? Did you even notice that all my calls and texts have come from a different number? That the address you have for me is no longer valid? That I had a major art exhibition? That I was promoted at work? Do you know anything about my life at all?" His silence was damning. "That's what I thought." I continued, my voice steadier now. "You don't know these things because you've never cared enough to ask. You've never been interested in me as a person, only as an extension of yourselves when it was convenient." Marcus appeared in the doorway, having heard raised voices. He gave me a questioning look, silently asking if I needed support. I nodded, slightly grateful for his presence. "Who is this again?" my father demanded, gesturing dismissively at Marcus. "My partner," I replied. "We've been together for over a year. Another fact you would know if you had any genuine interest in my life." My mother had joined us now, her social smile firmly in place. "Alana dear, this isn't the time or place for family disagreements. We have guests." "When is the time, Mom? When have you ever made time for me or my feelings?" Her smile faltered. "That's unfair. We've always provided the best for you." "Things, yes. Money, yes. But actual parenting, being present, showing interest or affection, when did either of you ever do that?" I was vaguely aware that other family members had gathered nearby, witnessing this confrontation. Under normal circumstances, I would have been mortified, would have immediately backed down to preserve appearances. But I was done with the pretense. "I grew up feeling invisible in my own home," I said, addressing not just my parents now, but the extended family who had accepted their narrative without question. "I raised myself. I celebrated my achievements alone. I dealt with disappointments alone. I learned not to need parents because mine weren't emotionally available." Aunt Carol gasped softly. Uncle Stephen looked uncomfortably at the floor. "Alana," my father started, but I wasn't finished. "The saddest part is that you don't even realize what you've missed. You don't know the person I've become because you were never interested enough to find out. And now you want the lake house, the one place I felt truly seen and loved as a child, because of your sentimental attachment. The irony would be funny if it weren't so painful." My mother stepped forward, her voice low and urgent. "You're embarrassing us, Alana. This isn't appropriate conversation for..." "For what, Mom?" "For people to hear. Because it might damage your perfect family image. I'm sorry if the truth is inconvenient, but I'm done pretending." I turned to the rest of the family. "I'm sorry for disrupting the gathering. I loved Grandma Rose deeply, and I'm grateful for her generosity. But I can't continue participating in this fiction that we're a normal, loving family. We're not, and we never have been." With that, I walked past my stunned parents, through the cluster of relatives, and out the front door. Marcus followed close behind. The attorney caught up with us as we reached my car. "Ms. Thompson, I still need you to sign several documents regarding your inheritance," he said, looking somewhat flustered by the scene he had witnessed. "I'll come to your office on Monday," I promised. "I can't stay here right now." He nodded, understanding. "That would be acceptable. Here's my card." As we drove away from my childhood home, I felt simultaneously drained and liberated. "I can't believe I just did that," I whispered. Marcus reached over to squeeze my hand. "I'm proud of you. That took incredible courage." "I don't think I can stay in Portland tonight," I admitted. "Not after that." "We don't have to. We can get a hotel room in Vancouver or Olympia and head back to Seattle tomorrow." I shook my head. "Actually, there's somewhere else I'd like to go. Someone I need to see." An hour later, we pulled into Taylor's parents' driveway. Mrs. Williams opened the door and immediately enveloped me in a warm hug. "Taylor told us you might stop by. Come in, sweetheart. You look like you could use some tea and conversation." That night, sleeping in Taylor's childhood bedroom surrounded by photos of our high school years, I felt a sense of peace despite the emotional turmoil of the day. I had finally spoken my truth. Whether my parents heard it or not, I had claimed my own narrative. The months following that confrontation at my parents' house became a period of profound healing and transformation. After returning to Seattle, I spent several days processing the intensity of emotions that had surfaced. Marcus created a protective space around me, fielding calls from well-meaning friends and bringing simple meals when I couldn't muster the energy to cook. Dr. Winters helped me navigate the complex aftermath during our sessions. "What you did took extraordinary courage, Alana," she said. "Speaking your truth after years of silence is both liberating and terrifying." "Part of me feels guilty," I admitted, "like I've betrayed some unspoken family code by exposing the dysfunction publicly." "That's a common reaction," she assured me. "Family systems often operate on the unspoken rule that problems must remain hidden. Breaking that rule feels like betrayal even when the rule itself was harmful." We discussed what healthy boundaries might look like moving forward. I wasn't interested in cutting my parents off completely despite their neglect, but I needed to establish a relationship on new terms if any relationship was to exist at all. "What do you want from them realistically?" Dr. Winters asked. After careful consideration, I replied, "Acknowledgement. Not even an apology necessarily, but just an honest recognition that my experience growing up was real, that their neglect wasn't imagined or exaggerated." 2 weeks after the will reading, I received a formal email from my father. Not a call, not a text, but an email with the subject line, "Family Matters." Its contents were predictably devoid of emotional insight. "Alana, your mother and I have discussed your outburst at the gathering. While we disagree with your characterization of your upbringing, we recognize that perceptions may differ. We hope you will reconsider your position on the lake house as it has been in the family for generations. Please advise on your decision at your earliest convenience. Dad." No acknowledgement of my pain, no recognition of their absence from my life. Just a reiteration of their desire for the property and a dismissal of my lived experience as a mere perception difference. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I focused on practical matters. I worked with my grandmother's attorney to transfer the lake house deed into my name and set up accounts for the inheritance. I arranged for a property management company to oversee basic maintenance until I could visit the lake house myself. 3 weeks after receiving my father's email, I finally replied, "Dad, thank you for your message. My decision about the lake house remains unchanged. Grandma Rose wanted me to have it, and I intend to honor her wishes. I'm open to continuing a relationship with you and Mom, but only if it can be honest and respectful. This would require acknowledging the reality of my childhood experience, not dismissing it as a difference in perception. I don't expect perfection or even an apology, but I do need truth. When you're ready for that conversation, I'm available. Alana." Their response was silence, which I had largely expected. My mother sent a birthday card the following month with a gift certificate to a department store and a generic message. It represented their typical approach, material gestures without emotional connection, while my relationship with my parents remained in this uncertain limbo. Other aspects of my life flourished. Marcus and I planned our first visit to the lake house for a long weekend in July. As we drove up the winding road to the property, memories flooded back, fishing with Grandma Rose off the small dock, painting watercolors on the porch as the sun set, falling asleep to the sound of gentle waves against the shore. The house itself was just as I remembered, a rustic 2-story cabin with large windows overlooking the water, surrounded by towering pines. It needed some updates and repairs, but its bones were solid and every corner held warm memories. "I can see why you love this place," Marcus said as we stood on the dock that first evening, watching the sun sink below the tree line. "It feels peaceful. It's the only place from my childhood where I felt I could just exist without having to earn my right to be there," I explained. "Grandma never had expectations or conditions. She just wanted to be with me." That weekend became the first of many visits. Over time, Marcus and I began making the lake house our own, while honoring its history. We replaced the aging appliances, but kept Grandma's handwritten recipes framed on the kitchen wall. We updated the plumbing, but preserved the collection of smooth lake stones she had arranged along the bathroom windowsill. We repainted the walls but kept her art collection precisely where she had hung each piece. We invited friends for weekend gatherings, filling the house with laughter and conversation in a way it hadn't experienced in years. Taylor and her husband came often. Amelia from work brought her young daughter, who delighted in learning to swim in the same lake where I had first ventured into deep water under my grandmother's watchful eye. The inheritance allowed me to establish an art therapy program at the community center where I volunteered. Working with a professional art therapist, we created a curriculum specifically designed for children experiencing family difficulties. I thought often of Zara, the quiet girl who reminded me of myself as we developed activities to help children express feelings they might not have words for yet. 6 months after my confrontation with my parents, I received a call from my mother. It was the first direct contact beyond birthday cards and holiday texts. "Your father and I are considering selling the Portland house," she said after brief pleasantries. "We're thinking of downsizing." "That makes sense," I replied neutrally. "It's a lot of house for just 2 people." A pause. "We found some of your childhood things in the attic. Drawings, school projects, some books. I thought you might want them." It was the closest thing to acknowledgement she had offered. Not the recognition I had hoped for, but a small step toward seeing me as a person with a history, with attachments, with a childhood that mattered. "I would like that," I said. "Thank you for thinking of me." Another pause, longer this time. "Some of the drawings are quite good. I don't remember seeing most of them before." "I didn't show them to you," I admitted. "I didn't think you'd be interested." The silence that followed contained more honest communication than we'd had in years. "I'd like to bring them to you," she finally said. "Maybe see this lake house everyone's talking about." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a direct acknowledgement of their neglect, but it was an outstretched hand, however tentative. "I'd like that," I said. "Let me know when you are thinking of visiting, and I'll make sure I'm there." The following month, my mother came alone. She arrived with several carefully packed boxes of my childhood artwork, school awards, and report cards. As we sat on the porch overlooking the lake, she leafed through a portfolio of drawings I had made between ages 8 and 12. "These are really very good," she said, examining a detailed sketch of our Portland backyard. "I don't remember you drawing so much." "I used to draw all the time," I told her, "usually in my room or at Mrs. Garcia's house next door." She looked up sharply. "You spent time at the neighbors?" "Almost every day after school for years." I kept my tone matter of fact rather than accusatory. "She taught me to cook and helped with my homework." My mother's face registered genuine surprise, followed by something that might have been shame. "I didn't know that." "There was a lot you didn't know, Mom." She nodded slowly, returning her gaze to the portfolio. "I see that now." It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation scene from a movie. There were no tearful apologies or profound declarations of changed perspectives. But it was real, and it was a beginning. Over the next year, we established a new, more honest relationship. My parents would never be the nurturing, emotionally available people I had needed as a child. They were who they were, shaped by their own upbringings and limitations. But we found a way to connect as adults that acknowledged our past without being defined by it. My father remained more distant, but even he made efforts in his own way. He helped arrange for the lake house roof to be replaced when I mentioned it needed work. He sent articles about art exhibitions he thought might interest me. Small gestures, but meaningful from a man who had previously shown so little interest in my world. Marcus proposed to me on the lake house dock at sunset exactly 1 year after our first visit. As we celebrated with champagne on the porch, I felt my grandmother's presence in the gentle evening breeze. She had given me not just property and financial security, but the foundation for a new beginning. Today, my life is rich with genuine connections. Marcus and I are planning our wedding for next spring, a small ceremony at the lake house surrounded by chosen family. I've been promoted to creative director at my firm. The art therapy program continues to grow, reaching more children each year. I still attend therapy sessions with Dr. Winters, though less frequently now. "You've done the hard work of healing," she told me recently. "Not by forgetting or denying your past, but by integrating it into your understanding of yourself. The family we build matters more than the one we're born into." This has become my truth. The relationships we nurture, the boundaries we establish, the love we choose to give and receive, these create the foundation for genuine happiness. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the permission to create a new story, one that honors our past without being imprisoned by it. If my story resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you had to create boundaries with family members? Did you find healing through chosen family? Your experiences matter, and sharing them might help others feel less alone. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories of resilience and healing, and like this video if it touched something in you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never determined by someone else's ability to see it.